All right. So before we start, I do want to mention that there is another group that has a single focus on strategies and outreach to save the 7 principles. If you're interested in saving the 7 principles, you can send an email to Julie Hotard at Gmail. That's Julie.Hotard and ask to join the UU Intercongregation discussion list. I will paste that link into the chat. So there's her email address. Thank you, Frank. So now I'll introduce Todd. Todd is the author of the Gadfly Papers and the Gadfly Affair. Has been a Unitarian Universalist minister since, I think, 1999. Is that right, Todd? All right. He's been active in criminal justice reform, environmental movement, and gay rights. After his book, The Gadfly Papers, was banned at the UUA General Assembly in 2019, he was censured and later disfellowshipped by the Ministerial Committee. He serves as a minister at the Unitarian Universalist Church of Spokane, Washington. So thank you for joining us, Todd, and we want to hear about the North American Unitarian Association.
Thank you. Thank you all so much. Thank you, Rebecca, for the introduction. Thank you all. Thanks to the Fifth Principle Project for hosting this. What an incredible turnout. I see the numbers continue to climb. We've got 87 devices online now, and some of those are more than one person. So thank you for turning out tonight for this conversation. I guess I want to start off by saying there's been kind of a natural evolution towards this point. Part of the evolution was just, there were a lot of us, I think, noticing something was askew in our liberal religion. I think Richard Trudeau, who I see on here, even caught it before I did, and got himself into a little bit of hot water that wasn't quite as public for his mind. So we didn't know about it, unfortunately, because it would have been good if the alarm bells had went off maybe a little bit earlier. But nevertheless, somebody was going to at some point do what I did, right? And it just so happened to be me who did it in a way that got noticed and sort of proved the point in its aftermath, if you will, the point of the book. But so I've noticed this kind of odd evolution. At first, I had a number of folks reach out to me, including ministerial colleagues who said, we really have our support. We agree with what you wrote and share your concerns and really appreciate what you did. And I would ask, geez, that's wonderful. Can I share your comments with my congregation? Because, I'm in a little bit of hot water here. And they would say, well, no, I wouldn't be comfortable with that right now. I've got to be careful of my retirement, these sort of practical concerns. So I appreciated the support, but everybody was afraid to say anything to the UUA. And it didn't take too long before some folks, particularly colleagues, said, well, let's appeal to their better natures. And let's write letters and say, hey, remember what we're about? Remember what our policies say? Remember what our bylaws say? Shouldn't we come together and talk about this? And they got nowhere. So that was stage 2. Let's try to appeal to their better nature of who they all are. That didn't work. Then there was outright rebellion where, some ministers wrote a letter of resignation from the UUMA, say, this does not represent at all who we are. We're not going to be part of it anymore, and began to cause a rift. Meanwhile, so many of the folks in the pew have been outraged by what was going on from the start, and it have become increasingly louder about that, to the point where it's impacting a lot of congregations. I mean, my congregation went through a splinter, I would say. We had about 15% of our membership leave, but there's some of your congregations out there that are in real conflict, and if 15% left, it would probably 15% would be the dissenters. So there's a real mix of what's going on in our congregations. But it seemed inevitable to me that at some point an organization would have to emerge that would pick up the slack, right? That would begin to provide some of the services that Unitarian Universalist Association currently is not, particularly to those of us who consider ourselves, genuine liberals. We are part of the Unitarian Universalism because it is a liberal religion and we have a liberal bent. I did not want to be that person. I've had no desire to start a new organization. I kept waiting in the evolution of things for somebody else to do this. And in truth, we do have some organizations that have some real special niches, like UMIAC, which is really working on a much more centered, open-hearted approach to racial equality than I think the anti-racism of the UUA represents. And we have the Fifth Principle Project that is really promoting, really focusing on restoring freedom of speech and democracy in the UUA, or at least preserving it for Unitarian Universalists in some way. So I appreciate that. What we don't have is an organization that provides some of the other forms of support that we have had as Unitarian Universalist congregations, liberal Unitarian Universalist congregations in the past years. One of the biggest one of those being ministry, right? I think that's the major concern I hear right now from congregations that are going into search. Where can we get a liberal minister? And my answer is, I don't know. I'm sorry, I don't know. We have to recreate that. There is also a tremendous need for us to be able to do exactly what we're doing here, and that is to be able to have honest conversations with each other, to be with people we may or may not disagree with, but we know if we come together, we're going to be kind and we're going to be respected and we're going to be friends, because that's what Unitarian Universalists do. We have different ways about us, but that's, we're not pushy. One of the reasons I believe our faith has not grown over the years is because we don't proselytize. It's not really in our nature, right? I have no impulse to convince somebody of my way of being. So I just want people to be able to be together regardless of regardless of where they're at in life and what their mindset is, if you will, their belief system. We also, so we need that. I mean, we desperately need to be able to know we're part of a community that has that traditional respect, where we can sit in pews together and have completely different perspectives on life, and we can have coffee afterwards, and we can be, again, have completely different beliefs on some major deals, but we don't care because we're together and we're friends, and that's what we're about, bottom line. So we need that. We have other practical needs like having services that we can enjoy, meetings that we can come together as a collective, conferences, conventions, education, curriculum, those sort of things that we trust and that is truly representative of our liberal values. Freedom, reason, tolerance is what I like to boil them down to, all under the umbrella of our recognition of a common humanity and that in the inherent potential in human beings, the potential for doing goodness and solving problems and agency, those sort of things. We need those things. We need a magazine or a newsletter that that is giving us pertinent information about the world we live in from our perspective, and that if we have dissenting opinions or things that we want to say, we can write and those can be published, and that our peers can experience a variety of the responses that are going on in the world, including dissent and disagreement and negative comments about some of the things they might be reading. So that, we need all those things as Unitarian Universalists. We don't have those anymore. So the NAUA is really cropped up to fill that niche, right? To reconnect us in those ways and to solve particularly the ministerial services problem is immediately, at least as we can. Those are things that we're not getting right now, and we need to have them. So that's what this is. It's not an alternative to the UUA. You know, now you know to become a member of the North American Unitarian Association, you don't have to leave the UUA as a congregation. At the same time, we're not going to reject organizations or individuals who might want to become part of the NAUA that have decided on their own that, you know, the UUA is no longer for them. But what I'm recognizing is that, you know, it's going to be a really long time before the UUA turns around, if ever. I mean, we're looking at least another 6-year term of an appointed president who is going to very likely continue the course that the UUA is on. If at the end of that we were, you know, people sort of realize, wow, what a mistake, we kind of went too far, let's try to fix things, it's going to take several years to fix. So we're really looking probably well into the 2030s, if then, before things start to turn around. We can't wait, right? Our congregations can't survive, liberal religion can't survive that long. So let's face it, we created the UUA in order to support each other in these ways, right? We fund the UUA so that it can support our congregations in these important ways. It's not doing that right now, so we can you know, shift our resources a little bit to support each other in the ways that we need to be supported. So this is what the NAUA is meant to be. It is, you know, we announced it a little bit prematurely, and that is because, as I'm sure most of you, if not all of you, are aware, within the past few weeks, some really major events happened that give us all cause for concern. One, of course, was the suggestion that we should eliminate the 7 principles from Article 2. And replace it with some meaningless euphemistic language, none of which, by the way, represents freedom or democracy or individuality or autonomy, all those things that many of us would say are why we're part of this faith to begin with. So that's a big, it was kind of a wake-up call for a lot of people. I mean, I hear some people are saying, well, it's too soon, you know, to start another organization. No, we've been struggling with this for years, my friends. If you're just waking up to it because of the 7 principles issue, you know, it's been a long time for a lot of us. And by the way, saving those principles, you know, by preserving them on the in the UUA bylaws does not save those principles. Those principles have not been followed for years, at least by the UUA leadership. So I'm more concerned about having an organization that actually lives by those principles than states them. Nevertheless, big concern. And then the other one, of course, was the announcement that you know, despite what the UUA bylaws say, despite a bylaw that was reaffirmed by their own delegates just a year ago, it was announced that they're putting forward just one candidate for president, and that became, you know, quite a concern to a lot of people. So there started being a lot of chatter, as a lot of you probably participated in or were aware of, about these concerns. And those of us working on the NAUA have been working diligently to get something up and running, but we realized it was probably a good idea to let people at least know what we were up to in light of these 2 events. So that's kind of the history of it. Where we're at right now is we're still organizing it. We're getting our documentation in place, which means we have applied and received an EIN number from the IRS as a church organization. We have filed articles of incorporation with the state of Washington and are waiting for those to be fully processed. We are looking into getting a bank account, nonprofit bank account. Been working on getting a website up and running. Jay may have more to say about that in a little bit. What we have now is very primitive and is subject to a lot of creative changes down the road, but we do recognize that people want to be able to connect fairly quickly to this. So I think that may be up within the next couple of days, if not sooner. We're hoping that by the end of January, we will have made some real progress on all of these issues, and the organization will be more formal. It will. So in some ways, this is patterned off the old CUC. So in 1961, when the Unitarian Universalist Association was formed, the Canadian churches also formed an organization within the context of the Unitarian Universalist Association called the Canadian Unitarian Council, that was specifically geared towards helping represent the congregations in Canada. And that was a group that ended up kind of becoming a separate organization from the UUA in 2002. And they call themselves the Canadian Unitarian Council, which they say on their website is a Unitarian Universalist, an organization for Unitarians and Unitarian Universalists, right? So we're sort of going that direction, calling it the North American Unitarian Universalist Association. It harkens back to the old AUA, the American Unitarian Association. But I really hope that we can have a North American Association of congregations that include Unitarians. Now, the way we phrase it in our bylaws and articles of incorporation are, it represents Unitarians, Universalists, and other religious liberals and religious liberal organizations, so that we're including everybody. The biggest reason we're doing this right now is some of you, if not most of you, probably know that there was a congregation that split off in Austin, Texas, a couple years ago, of dissenters, actually, and they formed what they were calling a Unitarian Universalist Fellowship, and within a few months received a very terse letter from the UUA claiming that they were violating their trademark and that they weren't allowed to continue representing themselves as Unitarian Universalists in any way, and couldn't refer to the seven principles, couldn't use a chalice. It was absolutely ridiculous. And some of those things I don't believe can legally be protected. And this was not a letter from an attorney. It was a letter from the UUA. It was a cease and desist letter, but it was not from an attorney. However, trademark law does protect trademarks, and I think there is a legitimate claim to Unitarian Universalism, even though there's been a lot of, there's Unitarians in Eastern Europe that have nothing to do with the UUA. There's the Canadian Unitarian Council that is no longer part of the UUA. Unitarianism is very ancient and old, as is Universalism. But to call something the Unitarian Universalist Association, we can't simply shift the language and say, we're the Unitarian and Universalist Association, or we're the Universalist Unitarian Association. That's not how trademarks work. Trademarks protects anything that resembles the trademark language. So we do have to recognize that's really a fight we don't want to take on. So we're calling it the North American Unitarian Association, something that I think is very inclusive of our continental relationships. And also, it's an organization I hope will not only include Unitarians, those who identify as Unitarians. Sophia Bentecourt, who is the presumed UUA's presidential appointee, claims to be a staunch Universalist. So if there are folks out there who feel that they are staunch Universalist, they would be welcome. If there are folks who understand what it means to be a Unitarian Universalist or have some idea in their heads what exactly that means, they're welcome. I think if there's other organizations, wouldn't it be great to create something like the UUA was supposed to be, where it was envisioned as a religion of humanity that would be actually intercontinental and could welcome. I mean, if anyone who knows about Sikhism, for example, what an incredible religion that shares many of our values of inclusiveness and openness to others. So I think there's a lot of potential. Final thing I will say as I sort of run through this is, this is an association, but it is a religious association, but it is not the keeper of the religion, right? I do not see this organization as one personally even needs to list any principles in bylaws, right? It may be the organization should have a mission statement and plenty of statements about what our values are as the organization, right? But it would not be incumbent upon our congregations and our members to necessarily hold that specific language for themselves. People should, in my opinion, be able to articulate their values and their ethics in their own way. We will let you know what this organization stands for and why we exist. And hopefully if it resonates with individuals and other congregations, organizations, they would want to join and become part of it and help support it so that we can help support each other. But it is really, this is what we're envisioning as a service organization, right? We're not going to make the same mistakes that the UUA has made, which led to what, honestly, the folks who were concerned about the formation of the UUA to begin with. In fact, it's the reason the old Unitarians didn't allow churches to join the American Unitarian Association. They did not want it to become a sectarian organization, right? They did not want it to become a religious organization in the sense that it was articulating what the religion is supposed to be. And unfortunately, that is what has happened. That's what we've come to today. I don't want to be part of an organization like that. I want to be part of an organization that can trust its members to live their best lives and do the best they can and be supported in the way they need to do that in a way that helps them thrive. So that is the roller coaster, nutshell, rapid version of where we're at today. So I will open it up, I guess, now to conversation and comments and questions.
Thank you, Todd. We already have a couple of questions in the chat that I'm going to start off with. Several people have asked, you've used this universal kind of we. Who is with you? Who is on your advisory committee or your board, or do you have a board? So who is we? Okay.
So we is a very small group of people that started talking about this and said, okay, well, let's get together and form it and try to make it happen. I would call it a working group more than a board or a committee, although some of us have since been identified as board members, which needs to happen for articles of incorporation and those sort of things. But right now, it's mainly a working group where we come together, brainstorm, and talk about the best way to sort of make this thing happen. It includes, oh my gosh, I've got several members from my congregation. We've got 2 board members on site here or in Spokane, a member of our shared ministry team. We've got a distant member, Terry Anderson from Alberta. There's Terry. Mike Long is also a distant member. He is in North Carolina, and Jay Kiskell, Frank Casper are part of it. It was serendipitous. Jay and I, probably Frank too, but Jay Jay checks in with me now and then, or vice versa. And I think Jay sort of recognized at about the same time that I did that this is the next step in the evolution. And he happened to call me and we were talking about it. And he said, yeah, I agree. I want to be part of it. So who am I leaving out, Jay or Frank? Is that us so far?
I think that's the list. And we can be more public on that. We're not hiding anything. It is a small working group, and I'm sure we're going to invite more people in as we go forward. And so it's not exclusive, it's still open.
All right.
Yeah. So the way we see it happening right now, just again, okay, so we've got to get the formal organization started, right? So we'll get that going. Then we'll organize an official board, okay, and then we'll have committees that'll start, and hopefully the committees will bring in some of the folks that are joining us to be members. We're going to have committees that will help us work on the bylaws. Right now, we've got bylaws that are so simple, it's just to get us through the documentation process. My goal is to immediately jump on the ministerial. That's my biggest concern for our congregations, is getting liberal ministers and figuring out ways to problem solve that crisis right now, that shortage. We're going to have folks that are going to work on some of the stuff around education and services and networking, and the low-hanging fruit would be a video communications and a regular online newsletter. But we have a vision for an actual magazine, a hard magazine that would go out too, that would, be like the Christian Science Monitor. I mean, something that could be really considered reputable journalism, right? That would be free from any kind of organizational top-down control, right? It'd be something that professionals would help us put together. So, and then those services just build, right? So this is going to be something that will be evolving over time. And we're asking folks to be patient with us and to jump in and help just as soon as we can open those doors. So,
all right. Well, thank you for that. Who can be a member? A church, an organization, or individuals?
Again, God love the CUC, because I love that they say, we have individuals and we have congregations that are members, and that's what we're planning on as well. We have not, I can't speak for the whole group yet, and this is not something we've really planned, but my philosophy is, as far as membership dues go, that we should treat the financial support of an association like this the way we do our congregations, right? That it's voluntary. We want people to contribute what they can. And that way, the onus is always upon us to be an organization that is worth having around, right? It's worth supporting. We need to mean something to our members. One of the things I've heard about the UUA for years in congregations, and not just since 2019, but ever since I've been in ministry, is when congregations get together to start budgeting and they find out how much they should pay the UUA according at least to their standards. They say, why are we giving this much to the UUA? What are we getting out of it? We don't ever want people asking, what are we getting out of the NAUA? If you have to ask that question, you shouldn't support us. That's my philosophy. We want people to support us as they can, because they're getting something out of this organization. It's your organization. We're going to reinstitute, districts or whatever that looks like in this world of mass communication. Those sorts of things. There's a lot of voices and participation from folks.
Well, Todd, if I can break in, we've got a number of questions piling up in the chat, and we want to come them through the forum. So if you could get your answers on point, so we get as many questions answered here, that would be great.
I'll try, but I have to branch out.
So Alan has been waiting patiently, so we're going to call on Alan if you want to unmute and ask your question.
Okay. First, I'd like to say thanks, Todd, for moving this forward. I know there have been discussions within the MUAC, the Religious Professionals Task Force, about ways to have a pipeline for liberal ministers that's not dominated by a certain ideology and so forth. But and people have thought about some of these issues like what you're talking about, but it hasn't come to fruition yet at the timing line. So we appreciate your, moving this forward. I do want to express a concern that many terms that involve Unitarian or Universalists have from time to time been, patented, and then patents, have lapsed and so forth. So I think as soon as it's possible, whether it's North American Unitarian Association or whatever terminology can be established, I think you probably do need to patent the terminology to avoid getting it being taken up as something you can't use. So I would encourage that, and I think
we've already filed for the trademark on the NAUA and North American Unitarian Association. So that's at least in the works. I think we made some pretty good. We worked with an attorney on that, so I think we're in good shape there.
I assume you're going to be going for a 501c3 or some other similar status too, once you got.
Yeah, we actually registered as a church with the IRS, so that's automatic exemption. Yeah.
Okay, I'll let the others speak now.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So John Brett in Seattle has a question. Yes.
Yeah. Hi, John.
Hi, Todd. Thank you so much. My question is related to a membership issue. At the onset of your discussion, you talked about how even some of your colleagues who supported you were afraid to let that be known publicly, fear of sanctions. And while clearly individual people can join this organization without fear of sanction by the UUA, how do you envision us working to overcome the fears that exist among existing UU ministers who support you and may be inclined to support the organization but are fearful from those sanctions?
Yes, thank you. That's a really good question. Something we have to surmount. And by the way, when we do move into this committee to work on this issue, I'm definitely going to be reaching out to Alan and Richard Trudeau and others at UMIAC, because I know they've been talking about this some too, to help, to sort of help with this conversation. But my hope is that, you know, we'll do some triage work. We're going to look for some of those ministers that have spoken out. Some of them are retired, and we're going to say, hey, can we get a 3-month commitment from you? Can we get a 6-month commitment to serve a congregation as we start to build this thing? But my hope is there have been several, there were a lot more ministers who did not sign any of those letters and haven't said anything about any of this, that I think are just sort of laying low, understandably so. I think it is more of them recognize there's another avenue. You know, you don't have to be credentialed by the ministerial foolishness committee in order to have your credentials to be a credentialed minister. You don't have to have their blessing to remain in a congregation. Look at me, you know. So we want to begin to give folks an alternative so they start to feel safer about joining something like the NAUA. And, you know, if they're going to be disfellowship for it or whatever, that's not really going to matter, because congregations don't care as much about that credential as they do about liberal ministry. And it's not, you know, it's not going to be a free-for-all. We definitely want to have a certification process that recognizes the validity of one's ability to minister responsibly in a congregation. Right now, what we're seeing too often is ministers who have gone through the current process are really going in and destroying their churches. They've been taught to hate their religion, and they've been taught to hate their congregation, and they've learned that they are the heroes, you know, charging in on their white horses, and they're going to go in and slay all the dragons, and it's tearing churches apart. It's damaging them tremendously. So we need ministers that understand that our congregations are beautiful things, and they're filled with beautiful people, and they're mature people. And a lot of times the people in our congregations know a hell of a whole lot more than ministers do, and that we can learn from them and become better ministers. So those are the kind of folks we're going to be looking for. And those are the ones we'll be nurturing, and those are the ones we'll be fostering. And the plan is that over time, we're going to just try to help people feel at ease with going through the route of the NAUA or maybe some other organization the NAUA partners with or forms, kind of like you know, what they're thinking about with UMIAC. UMIAC's actually been talking for some time about actually putting together a seminary, and I think that's really necessary. There's some courses and curriculum that these ministers are not getting, and we need to establish those as well.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you. Mariah has a question next. So if you'd like to unmute and
I think Jim was next.
I think Mariah was next, but I'll get to Jim. So Mariah, go ahead.
Okay. My question was, and it might have partially just been answered, but I was going to ask the question as you were talking about going through, you know, the country, current ministers who would be available. I was going to ask about making new ministers, and if there was an idea to like create a new kind of seminary that would benefit congregations that lean more in the direction we lean.
Yeah. So there's two ends of it. There's the old ministers. You know, I'm one of the young old ministers. So a lot of the ministers who are sort of in line with my thinking have retired, you know, and so there aren't as many of us serving. So I kind of looking at this like as a World War II scenario. where we say, hey, we've got to call you back up for duty, and it doesn't have to be a permanent commitment so that you feel like, oh, it's not something I can do, but can you give a congregation 3 months as we start to build things up? On the other end of that, however, is there are young ministers going through Meadville, Lombard, and Starr King that secretly sit around and either gripe or joke with each other about the poisonous, toxic experience they're having. They just have to keep quiet about it. I got an email from one recently who just told me about a situation where in their cadre of students, they had 3 heart attacks in 1 week. One person had a heart attack and recovered. One had to have bypass surgery, and one died. All before Monday. All before.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and the individual said, they got out of it because I cannot put myself back in that toxic environment. Right. So there are young ministers, and I know some too. I've met some of these young ministerial students wrapped up in absolute knots because of what is being done to them in our seminaries. And I do my best to help unknot them a little bit by telling them they're not crazy. This is not right. That's something that a lot of people need to hear. This just isn't sane, guys. It's not right. This is not normal. Nevertheless, they just to get through the MFC, one individual was asked about their connection with me during the MFC interviews and said, I believe everybody deserves compassion, even Todd Ecklof. They said, okay, you have to go back and take another course in diversity, equity, and inclusion, right? So just saying they need, compassion means you have to go get additional training. So, but though they're there. So again, creating an alternative that says you can be credentialed, and guess what? There are congregations that want you. So that's my hope. So we're working on both ends, and then there are some things that our ministers have not been learning for a long time. I think Richard Trudeau would agree with that. Have some ideas about what we need to do to make sure people understand what it means to be part of a liberal religion. Right? What are our values? What is our history? What is the common thread that seems to run through our communities and our ideologies and our beliefs and our values? So we'll have to teach those too. We'll have to find, credentialing process that makes sure people have been exposed to that. Okay.
Thank you. Okay, now it's Jim Aiken, and I think that it was my error before getting him out of order. But Jim, you're up now. Thank you.
Yeah. Hi, everybody. I have one quick comment and one quick question. The comment is, as some of you know, I am a retired magazine editor. And so when Todd mentioned having a magazine, naturally the little bells went off in my head.
Hey.
And if anybody wants to talk to me about that in the future, I'd be very open to discussing it. The question is, I'm sure that the process of founding this organization requires money. And so I'm wondering how or where or when contributions could be made, and are contributions being solicited?
Yes, I'm just making a note real quick to remind me about that. Real quickly, Jay, can I just publicly thank you for the help that you've given me? Can I mention that?
Yes, you may.
Yes. So I'm sorry, I said Jay, but Jay, I meant Jim. Is that okay? Jay is giving me a lot of help, so I'll mention that in a bit too. But
thank Jim too. He's been a big help as well.
Jim has been a help to both of us. In fact, you helped connect me with Jim, so I thank you for that too. But Jim actually edited the Gadfly affair for me. He just stepped up into the plate and said, I want to help you with this, and thank goodness he did, because I needed it. So he's been and it was an important part of that process and helping me put that book together. If there's any mistakes in it at all, it's not Jim's fault. It's because we had a little bit of technical difficulty with the transcripts, and I had to go in eventually physically side by side and make the corrections and changes he suggested. So I hope I got them all. But anyway, I really appreciated your help on that, Jim. And I didn't get to thank you in the book because I hadn't put you in the credits early in the book, and it took me so long to make the changes. I was afraid of messing something up with the pagination, so I left you out. But I'm thanking you now for your role in making that book a possibility.
So Todd, he asked you about contributions.
Yeah, no, I was going to get to that, but he contributed already in that way, so I just had to thank him. So we are working on getting a bank account for the organization. We want it to be for a nonprofit account, so we're kind of waiting for the articles of incorporation. Like everything, things are kind of slow in Washington State right now because of the shortage of staff. So unfortunately, we haven't heard back yet. So for the time being, we're in the red right now. I'll put it that way. Not by much. I think we've probably spent about $4,000 or just a little bit less. A lot of that was for attorney fees. And so what we're asking folks to do who want to help support this with seed money and organizing money is to contribute to my church, the Unitarian Universalist Church of Spokane. And if you write a check, you can just write UUCS, but be sure and put in the memo line NAUA. And they've set aside a holding budget for us so that we can, anything we get goes to kind of a line item in our book so we know what it's for. And we received about 5 contributions so far, and that'll help us get towards, it's not quite what we've spent so far, but it's getting us there so we can start to reimburse some folks who have spent their own money to make some of this stuff happen. But we would appreciate any support, early support we get, any seed money we get through that process for the time being until we actually get something up on our website that allows folks to contribute directly. And you can go on the UUCS website and also contribute directly. You just would go to I forget what it is, unspecified or something like that, and then you just specify what it's for.
Thank you. So Penelope Reed is next. If you could unmute.
Oh, Penny, you're still muted, Penny.
Okay, so it's Penelope and hi, Todd.
Hi.
Somebody just said Reverend Dr. Finley Campbell is attending this, but when I look at the faces, and many people don't have video on, so I can't see their faces. There don't appear to be very many people of color. And I wonder if you would address that or talk about it and how this group, I mean, the UUA is already pretty lily white, and this group is really white. And I'm wondering how you might think about that.
Well, I think that's a much larger, probably a much larger conversation about liberal religion in general than the NAUA. So I don't think I could add much to that without going into a larger conversation about our demographics, about the systems we all know that are in place. What I would say is that 2 things. One, I think it's more important about who we're standing with and what we're standing for in our society than the number of the racial diversity that's necessarily represented in our groups and meetings. A lot of times our diversity is because of the systems that have been put in place in our society that have traditionally segregated us, and we're still working our way through that. One of those individuals who's doing that in a very specific way, a very different approach than the UUA has, is Finley Campbell, and I see his hands up, so he'll be able to address that a little bit more. But I really agree with the UMIAC approach of working through racist issues in a multiracial, multicultural way. And we can't help who we are or what we look like or what color our skin is or what, or the groups that we come in. But I know that from my perspective, anybody who wants to be part of this group is welcome to be part of this group. There's nothing that we are doing to keep anybody out who wants to be part of it. So, but it also can become rather presumptuous to think that, people of color who some have their own religious traditions that are meaningful for them are just going to jump into the UUA because we've changed some things. There's a very different relationship in many ways from a lot of white churches compared to the Black church. The Black church emerged at a time in this country when there were no services, no social services for Blacks in particular, right? I mean, there were no legal services, there were no financial services, there were no employment services, there was no police protection, and the church was everything. Unlike a lot of white congregations, with the exception of maybe like the Latter-day Saints, where there's some really deep family ties there that people feel connected to, but for many of us, religion is just a simple choice, right? It's like going to the buffet and figuring out what we want and don't want off the buffet. Well, I'm kind of tired of the Baptist. I think I'm going to go become a Unitarian, or I don't like Catholicism anymore. I think I'm going to go try something else. There's a deep loyalty, and I know my friends who are Baptist ministers, Black Baptist ministers. We're great friends, but there's a deep loyalty to the religion that has been part of their lives and their families' lives and their grandparents' lives for a long time. So it would be presumptuous, I think, for us to think that we're just going to suddenly find ourselves, with a lot of different colored faces in our groups. At the same time, the demographics are really that the numbers have increased in the UUA a bit better than they have in the rest of the country as far as diversity goes. So.
All right, thank you. Stephen Palmer is next. If you want to unmute. Thank you.
Dr. Palmer.
Hi, Todd. I think this is a great discussion. One concern, a significant concern I have, is that during this period of chaos, people are leaving our small denomination. At least my own experience from the congregation, which I departed from in September, a number of members have already left. Some are unchurched. Others have joined the Congregationalists in our area. Connecticut is very congregational, as you know. And so my concern is, in this period of chaos, is there some way that, and as you know, of course, I'm attending your congregation from Connecticut to Spokane. Is there some way that the NAUA can reach out electronically or by methods of remote religion to make it known that liberal religion is alive and well electronically, and that hopefully we will be able to, through the NAUA, place ministers in congregations where they can actually physically locate. But don't give up hope. Don't leave the religion. So I'm wondering if down the road there could be some strategy to prevent that bleeding of people due to frustration and the chaos within our denomination at the present time.
Yeah, I think you sort of answered your own question there, really. We at this time, the best hope for that is taking advantage of the technology before us and recognizing that we can be a much broader community that is not confined to sanctuary walls. And that's something that, again, UMIAC has been very good at, holding services and convocations and creating opportunities for people to come and worship together in ways that are representative of our values. So I think the biggest thing is for us to get the word out. Now, as far as the NAUA goes, I'm a big believer in technology and particularly using it in church work. We've been streaming at our church for many years. It was one of the first things I helped instigate when I came to Spokane for the specific purpose of transcending our sanctuary walls, of recognizing that the world is getting so much closer because of communications technology, and there's no reason why Unitarian Universalists can't be interconnected no matter where we're at. The technology is developing so quickly that very soon we will become a species that transcends the limitations of location, right? We will be able to seemingly be anywhere with anyone at any time in the world. That's where we're heading. So being early adopters of the technology like streaming and then Zoom meetings like this and 360 video and virtual reality and augmented reality, those are the things that are coming down the pike that we need to be early adopters of. I would like to actually create a virtual sanctuary that people can attend from time to time. So yeah, in addition to opening up Unitarian Universalist Church of Spokane to distant members, which we're working on, as you know, and participants, I would like to see the NAUA provide regular services, worship services, as well as other gatherings that people can attend from all over the place. Again, that's something that UMIAC is already doing as well.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. So we do have people lined up to speak. We have a lot on the line today, so I want to remind you to keep your remarks brief. Even Todd has a tendency sometimes to keep on talking. That's the minister in him.
Not pithy. I'm not pithy.
So, Kate, you can unmute and go ahead.
Yes. Well, I had two comments. One is about the diversity, and Todd didn't mention it, but I was one of the people who called him, and we actually did try to get a large number of ministers to write a letter to the UUMA, and it got to be fairly public, and lots of people said no. But there were about 70 who were willing to go public, and we have that list. And also, what I found is that it's doubly difficult if you are a minister of color, because the pressure on you not to break ranks is even bigger than it is. I mean, it's very big if you're employed. Up until it happened to me, we thought you were safe if you were retired. And so that's why we got so many retired people standing up. So that I would like to press Todd and the rest of you on that committee to look for a little wider diversity than white men from Washington, in the sense of I've been in the ministry 42 years, and the brand of UUism is quite diverse depending on what part of the country you're in, diverse theologically. This group is trending older. It's good to get a at least middle-aged, more middle-aged folks involved. The other thing I wanted to say is about the church thing. One of my colleagues in Albuquerque, about before all of this online thing, she was sort of the pioneer of doing online church. And what she did was to get house churches in small towns in New Mexico so that people gathered, but they got their sermons and some of their worship content, virtually online. But then they also had the community, which is the reason that so many people want to go to our churches. They want to have a community of people that are part of their lives, that pastoral element, the community element, and I think helping set that up in various ways is something that would be really useful for these churches where there are breakaways, where maybe 10 people, like happened in Austin, where there's a group of people who no longer find the local church useful, but don't really have enough to start a new church, perhaps.
Great, thank you.
All right. So, Finley, you can unmute, and people have been asking in the chat, what is UMIAC? So you may want to briefly explain that, but so there you go.
All right. I'll try to be brief. As a Baptist turn UU, because if you think Todd got a problem, you should hear me. Reverend King's birthday should remind us of his greatest statement whenever we are attacked because we are all pale faces. I just look like I'm black. Actually, I'm a white guy with a brown skin. I'm called an Oreo by some of my anti-black people. Number one, content of our character, not the color of our skin. I like to add the word commitment. The content of our commitment, not the color of our skin. We're going to break through that form of put down, insult. And I say, hey, check my deeds as well as my creed. We went to Gettysburg and laid a wreath. UMIAC did laid a wreath at the Maine 25th fighters. Not a black person in the group were willing to give their lives to kill, as was warned by Jefferson Davis. He never believed that white men would kill other white men to set the colors free. Well, they proved it at Gettysburg and laid the basis for emancipation and eventually the ending of slavery. Item number two, we're so bound down with this race thing within the UAC, we've never really did a good job of reaching out to the potential UUs in the Black community. There are a bunch of them. They don't like this Baptist church stuff, like many of you. One of my best friends who's a member of UMIAC and part of our steering committee, his name is Elvin Sandridge. Some of you may have heard him speak. He is down on Black religion. Sometimes I have to argue with him about, yeah, but what did we do positive? He said, well, look what they did to me. And he loves UUism, how we reached out to him. So we haven't had a chance to really do this, because every time we get ready to do some kind of evangelizing, up comes the race issue. Up comes some other issue to block us from our true duty to make known to the world that there's a way to do religion without having a God looking over your shoulder saying, you're wrong because you want to dance, play cards, or drink some whiskey on Sunday night. My third and final question is, my brother, little brother, I call him little brother. I found out he's younger than me. I gave him a blessing when I spoke at Spokane this past April. And he's my little brother. And my little brother's really, really moving. Comrades, we're just getting started. This is the first time we've ever gathered together to discuss this. So we're going to be in Pittsburgh. We better be in Pittsburgh. We're going to be in Pittsburgh and let people know we exist. A new group. We can argue about how to name it, but it now exists. And UMIAC can now cut loose the seminary issue and turn it over to NUAU and the rest of the folks who need other counseling out on the issue of race. UMIAC stands for Unitarian, Universalist, Multiracial, Unity, Action, Council. I have been blessed to be one of the founders. Well, I was the founder, along with some other people like Alan Lindrup my wife Bobby many years ago, back in 2015. And we finally made ourselves known because we were one of the few groups that reached out to Brother Todd and said, hey, come and speak at our first convocation. He was our main minister. Our first time we had a brother in the Heretic Corner speaking. So this is the beginning. We don't know where it's going to go, but don't worry about the complexion. Worry about the inflection. And what is that inflection? Bringing
Thank you, brother.
Together.
Thank you, big brother.
Driving us apart. Right on, little bro. You're doing cool. You're doing cool.
And I love you.
Love you back.
Thank you, Finley. We appreciate that. And so Susan is next, if you want to unmute.
Is that me?
Yes, it is.
Oh, okay. I didn't realize that was coming from the chat.
Wait a minute. No, I'm sorry. It's the other Susan. Susan.
Okay.
And I don't see a hand up for you, Susan McWorthy.
No, I don't. I just put something in the chat, but my question's already been answered pretty much. So, yeah, thank you.
All right. So Susan Regal Harding, if you would like to speak.
Okay, thank you. I'm from San Diego, California. We are in that, our church is sort of in the same state of chaos. I can say this because I'm in that age group, but I see a lot of gray hair, and that would mean don't cover it. We need to find something that we can do while you're doing the whatever, or at least I do. I can't do a lot. So if there's something positive that we can be doing in the interim, I'd like, for instance, if we're still in a congregation, maybe do an audit of some sort that really finds out who we are and what we're doing and what's important. That's my biggest problem right now, because I don't have, at 81, you have X number of years and I want to do things and I don't know what to do. So maybe you can help on that.
Yeah, it's a tough question. And I want to, first of all, just say how much I understand the pain that many people are feeling who are part of congregations that are in conflict over this issue. I'm friends with I've become friends with a lot of members of congregations who are going through this struggle. And Susan, I can just tell in your demeanor and how you express that there's some of that in what you're experiencing too. And I'm sorry, are you was your congregation the one Arvid Straube was at for so long in San Diego? Yeah. I've been there. It was a mentor congregation to us in a program I was part of back in 2012. So it's a beautiful congregation, and I'm sorry that you're going through that. I think the thing that we can, the best advice I can give right now is to recognize that we are moving in a new direction, and that direction does not require us to bring the UUA back into a right relationship, as they might say, with us. What we can do is model for the UUA what liberal religion is supposed to be like, and what a successful liberal religion is, and let's bring them along. I'm actually still advocating that people don't leave the UUA. If you want to, I understand if it's like, why are we giving them a cent? If that's where you're at, okay, but I think the UUA is going to come around. I just don't think we have the time to wait for them to come around. So we have to start supporting each other. And so by recognizing in our congregations that we have so much power, right? We have so much power. One, our congregations are still autonomous. Two, we are free individuals. And three, we have each other. And four, we have traditionally supported each other as liberals across the continent. We can still do that. None of those things have changed. And so, as the great universalist said, give them hope, not hell. Right now, many of our congregations are going through hell, give them hope, not hell. We have all of these great things we can do. We have a different message. Finley Campbell just inspired us with some of what we have to offer, which is not to disparage ourselves by looking at the color of our skin or the gender or how gray our hair is. We are people with hearts and minds and souls, and we've got blood pumping through our veins, and we're passionate about our values and making and using them to make the world a better place. And I don't care what we look like, what gender we are, what race we are, how old we are. We have the ability to be transformative agents in this world, and to go into our congregations, especially now that the NAUA is on the way, and that there are other organizations like the Fifth Principle Project and UMIAC that have already been working on this. And we're coming together, we're coalescing, and we're going to do what we have to do as brothers and sisters that can go beyond our differences and work together to solve this problem in a way that not only helps save liberal religion in our world, but helps it thrive. Right? That's what we want. We want our liberal religion to thrive, and that's what we're going to do. And to give that positive message to those in our congregation who are wanting to fight back and get in a lot of conflict with the UUA or even with some in their own congregation. We don't have to do that anymore. We're going to show people how it should be done. And if we're wrong, our fruit will bear it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes. So, Jay, I have you next on my list.
Yeah, just briefly, there was a lot of conversation about UMIAC with Principal, the group that Julie and other team members are working on. All those can continue and should continue forward. We have many fronts, many things that we need to do, and there is an immediate issue with regards to the principles and helping to get democracy reinstalled in the UUA. So I don't want anyone to say, well, I can abandon this because this is here now. Right. The NAUUA is just in its formative state, and we have to keep the pedal to the metal on the groups that we're in now and be cross-supporting one another.
Thank you. Thank you. Mariah, you're up next. Thank you.
Hi. One quick question that I just now thought of as one of the few non-gray-haired people in this meeting. I actually have a 9-year-old and a 10-and-a-half-year-old, and I was curious, I know it's probably not top of mind for anyone, but is the NAUA going to put together or is looking towards some sort of RE program? Would you want me to talk to you about that? I can't take all of it on. I've got a lot going on, but I could maybe find pieces of it. I mean, I have 2 kids now who should be in RE but aren't. So yeah, I'm rambling. I'll stop now.
Yes, that's a key service on our list, is to provide at least the opportunity to proper curriculum, but not only that, proper structure. There's some really great structures out there right now designed for helping our children, exposing our children to those values that we believe make one a healthy human being and make our society better with people who have those values in it. And at the same time, retain them in the religion. That's something we have gotten away from because we've been using a schoolhouse curriculum type model rather than a worship model. So the model that we'll be recommending is having a children's chapel where children go in, they get to share the good things that happen to them and the bad things that happen to them. They get a little bit of lesson, and guess what? They get to spend a lot of time making friends and building relationships. So yeah, we're gonna help with that. And again, right now, and I appreciate issues of diversity and the many different kinds of faces, but right now this is just a working group, and it's not all old white guys from Washington. There's some old white women from Washington too. But other than that, it is pretty much white bread right now. But you know, we've all got good hearts and good intentions, and all we're really doing is laying a foundation, a really basic foundation right now. And once that, you know, once we feel comfortable that this organization is safe, that it can be the NAUA and it's registered and all that basic stuff's out of the way, which we've been only working on for a couple of months. We hope to have it done by January. We really want to open it up to membership and getting folks like yourself, Mariah, and others who are interested in particular missions to join us and create those groups to do it. This is not going to be something that has these services available immediately. We have to create those. We have to build them together. And you know what? That's what we used to do in the UUA, right? When we had districts, that's how it was done. We had program councils and district boards, and those were the people that got together, and we elected representatives for an unwieldy board in Boston that had lots of people that represented the entire country. And people were excited about it. It was fun. It was joyful. We created friendships. We felt like we were part of something bigger than we were. You know, that's what we need. So yeah, there's a few of us old folks that are just like gotten together and said, hey, let's do this because it needs to be done. But the reality is what we're trying to build is a very basic foundation for everyone who's interested to get on board and start co-creating with us, you know. And so that would be great to have you aboard that.
Thank you. Thank you. Frank, you're next.
Thank you. To the question of what can be done during the time that this is being built, people want something constructive, something substantive to do. And Todd kind of referred to this. It was a time before when we had avenues of communication between congregations. That was with the not the district, but the regional district. And the one thing that we've run into, the problem that we've run into constantly, is that we don't have sufficient avenues of communication out to the rank and file UUs, many of whom do not even know what's going on. And if everybody on this call were inclined to, they could exploit the number of contacts they have with other congregations, other people in other congregations, and spread the word out. That's been a big problem for us, and this part of the reason that this is being formed is to solve that problem.
Thank you.
There. Thank you, Frank. I don't see any other hands up right now. I have posted into the chat a couple of times with where to make donations for the NAUA, for the Fifth Principle Project, and also how to get a hold of the UU Intercongregation discussion group to try to get the word out about saving the seven principles. So you want to check that out. Frank, did you have another question? Because your hand is still up, or should I move on to Jay?
No, I should have lowered my hand. Sorry.
Okay, Jay, so do you have something else to say?
You're muted. There you go.
Yeah, Frank and I've always been concerned about communication, and I think Julie and really put this thing on fire, building a cross-denomination, a cross-church communication. About the website, only today was a technical problem resolved to get the thing operational and going. So we're hoping to have something up, which is really just be here we are, give us your email and express your interest so we can continue moving forward. And Todd, you and I haven't spoken about this, but maybe we get something up in early January so people can begin going there and expressing some interest and showing their support. So that is coming, and I thank volunteers that have already offered to work on the website. If anyone wants to do that, put your information in the chat. So the website is coming, let's say early January, and the Fifth Principle will post something on that and go through all the other Tom Mosier and Julie and UMIAC. We're really building a network of communication. That information will spread pretty quickly.
I just noticed that Finley posted in the chat about the UMIAC's third Wednesday Zoom worship services. third Wednesday evenings. So be sure to check that out. So Mike Long has a question, and we'll move on to him if he wants to unmute.
Got it figured out. Not a question. I just wanted to make a statement that it's not impossible to be a member of two congregations. I'm a member of the congregation here in Charlotte and the one in Spokane. So there's no conflict. So the Spokane participation is via Zoom that's managed by Terry Anderson, and we break out into chat groups, and it's really working out well. We had 50 people or so the most recent Sunday. So think about that.
Great.
Thank you. Okay, Finley, we're ready for you. You've got a little more to say?
Yes, quickly, about our age differentials. In my sermon that I'll be preaching, I'll be reviewing my history as a racial justice activist. I'm retiring December 31st, 2022, and pick up my writing. And one of the things I'll be writing is letters, I call them letters to the young generation, the inheritors of the nightmare, not the dream, the inheritors of the nightmare, who are wandering around in a daze of social media, fun, TikTok, and a variety of forms of mental self-pleasure, shall we say. We must remember that they did destroy one of the things that the neo-racists, I'll use my term, one of the things that the neo-racist, Afrocentric neo-racist cabal did once they took over in 2017, led by the troika of Sinkford, Spencer, and Betancourt, was elimination of multiracial gatherings of liberal religious youth, LROI. Some of you might remember that wonderful organization. It was literally a seedbed for the creation of Unitarian Universalist cadre, who then later moved into ministry programs, and some of you again might have, I know Alan Leonard was a part of it. Destruction of and they replaced it with these racially segregated meetings, and I watched them evolve and develop. So right now, my demographic target are people who are 36 to 66. They're sort of aware that the world they lived in is sort of disappearing. Not only is there a democratic crisis within the UUA, it's a democratic crisis and around the world. And with authoritarianisms, some wearing masks of democratic facade and some wearing plain old fascist faces. So our job is to take who's ready. It is a time of Gideon's army, and that's a biblical reference, where we're looking for ones who are ready, the ones who are ready to move forward. And your experience, I like the word, the experience of this group, 36 to 66, is vital. It is vital for the renewal of our work as a liberal religion. So don't let our age get in the way of our work. Oh, another thing we got to worry about is that, and recognize that right now, a lot of young people in the UUA are really won over to this neo-racist ideology. And that was deliberate. That was deliberate by eliminating LRY and substituting these racially segregated youth groups. So I just wanted to add that to our discussion.
Can I just comment on that a little bit too, Finley? Because I think that this is the major problem I have with the ideology that is in the UUA right now. And again, I'm happy to live with different ideologies. I just want to be able to speak without being condemned. But I do disagree with this ideology for exactly the reason you're saying, right? This is a divisive segregationist mindset. You call it neo-racism. I sometimes call it neo-segregationism, because it's this basic belief that our identities, whether it's the color of our skin, our gender, our economic income, our all of those differences make us so different that we can't possibly connect with each other, right? It's like there's no common humanity in this postmodern milieu that unites us more than makes us different. And so we harm each other by our presence. We harm each other by our differences. This is not Unitarian Universalism. This is the antithesis of what Unitarian Universalism has been about. the notion that we can't be together and we have to have rooms and different meeting spaces because we are so different from each other that we can't possibly understand each other, and we're naturally going to walk away feeling exhausted and hurt and bleeding by our encounters with those who are different from us. That is not our religion, and that's what we're fighting for.
Amen.
Absolutely. So Barbara and Ted are up next, and they will be our last question. I think we're getting very close to our time limit.
I would like to mention that we have a very active individual named John McWhorter. Has anybody contacted him? Has anybody read his book, Woke?
Oh, racism.
Yeah. John McWhorter actually mentions me and Richard Trudeau both in his book, and have been in communication with him a few times. I got to fist bump him in Denver not too long ago, but that's as far as it went.
Okay, great. I'm glad to hear that. What about Robert Fulgham?
I don't know him. Unfortunately I don't have never had the pleasure of meeting him, but I definitely know his work.
Yeah, well, in Washington, somebody there should have some contact with him and make him aware, if he's not, of what's going on.
I'm sure he is, and I don't want to call anybody out or criticize anybody, but it has been surprising to me and disappointing how many of the old lions, if you will, of this religion have not spoken out on these issues or gotten up in front of the battle lines or come to the defense of others. I'm not sure why that is. I'm sure I'm grateful that Finley Campbell has stepped up as one of our older brothers.
Well, some of them may not have been sort of just dropped out and not been aware.
Well, maybe so, but it's pretty hard right now for some of these folks I know about it. And they've not stepped up, and it's been sad to me.
Well, somebody with 1 degree of separation or 2 should be able to find out if that's true, unofficially, if nothing else.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Ted. Thank you. I'm not seeing any other questions, and it is getting rather late. So I think we're going to wrap it up. I would certainly want to thank Todd for sharing so much tonight and filling us in on what the plans are, and also thank the Fifth Principle Project and Jay Kiskell and Frank Casper for setting this up and taking care of all the registrations. So I'm sure you're going to be hearing more about the North American Unitarian Association, and we certainly do appreciate your help. I did post in the chat how to make donations. If you want to do that, you can save the chat by clicking on those 3 dots at the lower right corner of your chat screen, and the chat and all those email addresses will be saved to your computer when you close and exit the Zoom. So thank you all.
I have the final word, Rebecca, and offer a public thanks to you.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. It's good to see everybody.
Thank you all.
Good night.
Good night.